Hey guys, welcome back to episode 3 of our podcast. I'm Coach Alex.
Coach Mike.
Today we're going to be talking about the importance of, first one actually was the importance of training. This is like a little part 2 of that. It's kind of the importance of what do you do when you're training, because I know me and Coach Mike ourselves, we grew up, playing soccer. A lot of times you don't really know what to do when you're training, especially when you're by yourself or you're with your friends. So today we're going to speak about like what you can do to structure your training properly so you see that improvement that everyone wants to see.
Yeah, I think it's super important that you go there with a plan. When you go to the gym, you don't just show up and guess. You're going there with some sort of plan. Same thing when you go to the field, you need to go there with a plan. You can't just go there to shoot. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today, but a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we should touch upon is kind of not the problem, but like the things that we do see in kids when they're quote unquote training. So a lot of times, you get in the habits of just showing up to the field and working on things that you're really good at, because, that is fun, right?
Yeah.
If you're good at shooting, you're probably going to go and do shooting for 30 minutes with your right foot if you're a righty, or left foot if you're a lefty. But you want to go and work on, all aspects of the game.
What I see too much is like I drive past the field and all I see is just kids just shooting on goal. And great, that's a super important part of the game, but there's so many more aspects to the game to work on. And I see way too many kids, even when they come here to train, the first thing they do is grab a ball and they start shooting. This is like one of the easiest ways to get hurt, because other than sprinting, shooting is one of the most extraneous things you can do in the game and the easiest way to hurt yourself. So without like a proper warm-up, without like getting your body ready to just go and shoot, for me is insane. Like that's how you're going to get injured super easily. So I think that's why we're kind of breaking down too, is how to get to that point where you get to there.
Yeah, I think too, like, honestly, it's hard sometimes as an athlete to know when you're improving. And if you're just going to the field and you're shooting, like, yeah, you might get better at shooting, but you're not going to know if you're improving at other aspects of the game, dribbling, creating space, making runs. So all those things are very important. And if you're just focusing on one thing, then, you're not going to be a complete player.
Yeah, and like you said, if you're just focusing on shooting, well, I hope you can shoot from 50 yards away, because if you can't do anything else other than shoot, you got to just shoot from anywhere on the field, and that's not realistic. So people just overlooks how much importance there is in other parts of the game. And the great thing about soccer is there's not just 1, 2, 3, 4. There's hundreds of parts of the game that you can improve on.
Well, I think we should break it down because, obviously kids should want to go to the field. They should want to play. As coaches, we always say, like, just play as much as you can. But we want to break that down into, like, what exactly is just playing more.
Yeah. So I think, like, the biggest thing is, I guess, breaking it down to wasted time versus productive time. So what would you do? What do you think would be the best way for a kid to maybe structure his training when he goes to the field?
Yeah, so I think before you get to the field, I think everyone should have something in their mind that they want to work on. So let's just say it's dribbling. You're a winger, you want to focus on dribbling for this session. I would go, we have an Instagram, Defont Pro Training. We post a lot of different types of drills that work on different areas of the game. For a warm-up, because I do think a warm-up is very important to get your muscles activated, get your body ready. I would pick a speed and agility drill from our Instagram, warm up with that, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and then pick a dribbling drill that we have. It could be through cones, it could be anything that works on dribbling. Maybe pick 2 or 3, really focus on those drills, and then maybe a little cool down, stretching, rolling out, whatever you feel like you need to do. But just structuring your training in that session, puts you, not only is it going to get you better, but it puts you in the habit of having that structure, so that when you go to your team practice, you're like, oh, I already know I should do my warm-up, I'm focusing on these drills, and then I have a cool down at the end.
Yeah. So I think, me and Coach Steve, we're brothers, and we grew up, and as we grew up, we started to figure out how to actually train. I was probably in 8th grade, Steve was probably in 4th, so that's why he was able to get so much more benefit out of it. But we used to not understand what to do to train. Like, when we were younger, we had no cell phones, the internet was just starting, you didn't know what to do. It was someone's dad that told you need to do this, and that's what you did. Now you have so many more outlets. So when we started to figure it out, and also when I was playing professionally, I had a way I started to train. So I'd go to the field, I'd warm up a little bit, maybe it's a jog or 2 around the field, get my legs moving. I'd start doing like leg swings, like a dynamic warm up, stretching. Then I would start doing like some juggling with the tennis ball, with the mini ball, with the regular ball. Then I'd go into like my foot skills, passing, some speed and agility, then I would start working on like position-specific stuff. I was a center back, so I would start working on taking touches out of the back in a direction. I would start hitting long balls. I would start working on my 1v1 defending. But I think there's so many aspects. And the big thing for me is the technical part of the game, because when you're little, like, you might be a right back right now, but you could be a forward when you're playing later. Or you vice versa, you might be a forward right now, and that's what I was. I was a forward when I was little, and I turned into a center back. So I think, especially when they're young, it's not about being good at just you think you have one position. Like, it's being good as an overall good player. So that means having really good technique on the ball when you're dribbling, stopping, starting, changing direction, having good skills, taking touches in directions, taking the ball out of the air, like so many things, checking your shoulder, getting your head up. There's so many things, good passing range that you can be good at to be an overall good soccer player, because then that's going to give you the opportunity to be able to play multiple positions and get on the field more.
Yeah, I think too, when I was younger, like, I was very motivated because I loved the sport, so I always wanted to go to the field. But a lot of times when I got to the field, I like brought my soccer ball with me, a couple cones, and I got there and I was like, wait, like, what am I supposed to do? I didn't have any drills in mind, and then I ended up just doing what most people do, just shooting or just like kicking the ball up in the air. So I think the structured training is very important.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think when it comes to like what exactly should you do, it does, when you're younger, you should focus on all areas of the game.
Yeah.
Don't just corner yourself into being a center back, being a center forward. As you get older, maybe like around high school, and like you're kind of solidified in a certain position, then you can start doing those position-specific drills. But I think when you're younger, it's important to focus on everything.
Yeah, and also to give yourself the best ability to get on the field is to be good at everything, just an overall good player. But I also think like we should also break down maybe how to get shooting is important, but how do they get to that point? Not just going to the field and shooting. How would you maybe break it down so that obviously shooting is an important part, but I would say maybe it's like one of the last things you do in a session. How do you get to that point?
Yeah, so I think, you got to think about what situation are you going to shoot in a game, right? You're never going to shoot a ball that's standing still, unless it's a free kick, penalty kick, or a corner kick, which is not really a shot, but you're always going to be moving, either dribbling past the defender and then shooting, or, taking a touch out of your feet and then shooting. So I think, it's working on the process of shooting, not shooting itself. Obviously, you want to have a good shot, you want to score, but you want to work on the process that gets you to the outcome of shooting. So if I was going to the field and I was working on shooting, first thing I would do is dribble out a cone or a pole, whatever it is. Doesn't even have to be that, just a random thing on the ground, and work on one specific move, maybe a scissor, and then work on that touch before I shoot to set myself up for a good shot.
Yeah, I think that's super smart to be able to put yourself in the situation before you get there, get really good at this skill to give yourself that space. Then as you're warm later on in the session, you're able to start now working on shooting the ball, hitting it with some power, finding the corners. But the problem we see a lot is kids just shoot randomly and aimlessly with no real understanding behind it. And we said this, but there's more to the game than just shooting the ball. And I think that's what we need to get the parents and kids to all understand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it doesn't just have to be shooting, right? If you're going to the field and you're just dribbling, or you're just passing, or you're just working on controlling the ball out of the air, it's the same thing as shooting. You gotta, expand your sessions, work on all areas of the game so that, you can shoot, you can take the ball out of the air, you can have a good first touch. You want all those things to be a complete player.
Yeah. Now, how important do you think a warm-up is?
Yeah, so I think, that's very important because it sets yourself up to having a good session. A lot of times, not having a good warm-up it can be both physically, mentally, and technically affect how you're, playing in that session. And I think we see it here too, like a majority of the kids, the first thing they do when they come in is kick the ball off the wall. And, a lot of them can't juggle or can't do certain things. So, I think if you can establish yourself, and there's a handful who don't do that, but it's very rare. I think there should be that thought process of, when I come here and, maybe there's 5-10 minutes before I start, do the warm-up that we have outside posted, or juggle, do something that, you can see improvement on.
Yeah, I think that the difference between a kid who warms up and the difference between the one who doesn't, I see it all the time. We have, I would say, a handful of kids that are trying to be professional enough where they go and do a warm-up, and their session and the quality they get out of their session is 10 times more than a kid who just shows up and just starts training. We see it all the time. I can name a couple kids, but when they come in, they're ready to go. I see a lot of kids that it takes them 10 minutes to get into the session because they've just been fooling around before they even start, and then all of a sudden they think they're going to come in and go 100%. It's not how it works. So the kids that come 10, 15 minutes early and get themselves ready to go 100% from minute 1 to minute 60 in the session are the ones that get the most out of the session. And the kids that stand in the waiting room just waiting and not getting themselves warm, it doesn't make sense to me. When I was playing professionally, when I woke up in the morning, I stretched. Then I went to practice. I got there early. I stretched again. I did a whole 20-minute stretching routine. I went outside. I did a dynamic warm-up. I started working on things I needed to work on, like little technical things like dribbling, passing, taking the ball down. Then I went into my actual practice, and then after practice, I stayed after to work on individual things I needed to work on. Let's say, like I said, was talking about before, long balls or heading away, attacking the ball. Like those are the ways that you approach your training professionally. Because when you don't have a plan, when you don't have this mentality to improve, it's going to be very tough for you. And when you can start to keep track of what you're doing and show up from minute 1 to minute 60 and put that 100% in because you have the cool down, the warm up, I think that's where the improvement starts to really happen.
Yeah, I think it's just like in a game, right? If you're on the bench, say you didn't start, and most coaches will be like, all right, go warm up before you go into the game. You're not going to sit on the bench and then go right into the game. Yeah. Because like I said before, it's not just physically, it's mentally, technically too. You want to prepare your body, right? For the physical part, you want to get your muscles warm. You don't want to go in there cold. For the mental part, it's, getting your mind ready. You can't just jump from, sitting down to just, oh shoot, I'm in the game. I got to play. And then the technical, you want to get your touches warm because it's hard to just go in there without touching a ball, right? Yeah. So same thing with practice. We always say this, how you approach a game should be the same way you approach practice.
Yeah, I think you reposted a Tom Brady video yesterday where it was talking about that, where it's practices, I bring the same mentality to practice that I do to games because practices are the games. They're going to be ready for the game. So why would that be any different than when I show up to the Sunday or the Saturday for the game?
Yeah, and I think too, we spoke a little about in the first one, you might not have time for a 60-minute session, but if you're going back to what you said, that wasted time versus productive time, if you have a 15-minute productive session, that's going to be better than a 60-minute session of, just shooting or just doing wasteful things.
Yeah, and I think as we got older too, I think you started to see how injuries start to happen more, right? So at least for me, it was very easy. I mean, luckily, knock on wood, I didn't when I was playing, but it's so easy to get injured. And how it happens is people not preparing their bodies properly because it is a strenuous activity we're doing. So I think maybe you could talk a little bit about how injury prevention or how you could get injured because you're not doing the right things.
Yeah, I think when you're younger, you don't really see it as much because when you're young, you can just jump into a game and, you might not get hurt. But as you get older, it does get very important. If you don't stretch, if you don't take care of your body, if you don't eat right, you're going to be a lot more likely to get hurt. But I think it's important to establish that responsibility when you're younger. Because you don't see a lot of younger kids stretching before and after a game. So I think if you can establish that and get it into your routine, like you said, a proper warm-up at these sessions, you're just going to be built and prepared for when you get to high school or when you get to college, and it's very important.
Yeah, I think that there just needs to be an understanding from everyone of how also the warm-up, yes, is preparing your body, but I also think it starts to prepare you mentally. I knew when I started the warm-up, okay, now I was focused and I was ready to do what I had to do and go in there and be professional. So a lot of the kids want to play professionally. They want to play Division I soccer. They want to play on all these teams, but you got to ask yourself, are your habits determining that? Are they going to bring you to where your goals are? Because you might say you want to go do these things, but are your habits helping you get there? And I think a lot of kids would have to say, and a lot of parents would have to say, no, that's not the case. You can't just show up and just jump into the sessions.
Yeah, I think too, with a warm-up, when I was younger, I never really understood what a warm-up was for. I was just oh, it's a warm-up, we're all doing it, let's just do a warm-up. But it's actually really important as we're speaking about. It's, it can lead to, if you don't do a proper warm-up, it can lead to injury. It can lead to, not playing as well in the game. Because I know for me, especially, before a game, if I didn't take the warm-up seriously, I usually ended up not playing well.
Yeah. Well, I also think everyone's different. So as you start to understand your body a little bit more and your mechanics, I think it's important to have your own individual warm-up as opposed to, the team warm-up is great, but I would also do my own individual warm-up before the team warm-up because I knew what my body needed and what I needed to do. So maybe it'd be like good if we can both break down what our individual warm-ups were before our team warm-ups so that maybe the kids can start to understand what they might do. So I'll start. So when I started to really figure it out, I started to make sure I was doing a stretch. So I had like a stretching routine where I would do my individual hamstring 2 times each for 20 seconds. Then I would like do bend downs in the middle for my hamstrings for 20 seconds. I'll make my feet closer to make it a little more difficult. Then I would do like my hip flexors. I would do my groin, both sides of my groin. I would do my calves. I would do my quads. I would do I think it's called the pigeon pose for your hips. But I think this just helps you avoid those injuries. The more flexible you are, the ability you're going to have when you get into maybe a difficult situation game where your body's got to bend a certain way, all of a sudden maybe a muscle's not snapping now because it's more elastic because you've been stretching it. So I would do that. Then I would get up. I would start doing a dynamic warm-up. So I would do a jog. Like I would be on the end line. I'd jog to the 18, jog back a couple times. Then I would start opening the gate. I would close the gate, leg kicks, backward leg kicks, high knees, side shuffles. Then we'd start getting into more a little more difficult dynamic movements like shuffling forward, shuffling backwards, side shuffles, karaokes. Then I would start getting into sprints. And then after that point, I knew I could, now I'm ready for the team warm up. Not just physically, but also mentally. I knew I put myself into the game already.
Yeah, I think that's very important. For me, what I figured out was post-game. Like I never really did anything after a game because I was like, oh, the game's over. I'm ready for, the next game. I'm going to just rest. But what I figured out is like after a game, especially if I played a lot, by the time I got to next practice, I was sore. And I couldn't really practice because, my hamstring was tight or my calf was tight. So after the game, I figured out a stretching routine that worked for me. My calves and my hamstrings most of the time were what bothered me. So I would focus there, do calf stretches, put one foot over the other and kind of stretch your calf. With my hamstring, I would do kind of the exercises that you were talking about. This is as I got a little bit older, because obviously you don't have access to this when you're younger, but ice baths really helped.
Yeah.
That was a big thing to help ease my muscles and stuff. But I think it's important where you were talking about pre-game, but also post-game, because a lot of people don't think about I should stretch after a game as well.
Well, think about after you play a game, you maybe have 1 day of rest, then you've got to play again. So to your point afterwards, super important about the stretching part, the ice baths. I also used to do a pool little workout that would help me move my joints a bit more and get some more motion in my legs that I would do after training and after games. And I think it's just the more you take care of yourself prior and after your training, the longer you're going to be able to play the game. And if you don't, you're going to start to see your body decay pretty much because you can't keep up with the demands of it. As you get older, the game gets more difficult. People get stronger, faster, and you've got to be able to keep up with it. And if your body can't because you're not taking care of it, then obviously you're not going to be able to play the game for very long. So I think it is so important. We were talking about structured training, but also structuring your warm-up, structuring your cool down. I think all of it needs to be there needs to be some effort and thinking behind what you're doing, not just showing up and being all right, I think this would work. No, you need to sit down and be thoughtful behind what you're doing.
Yeah, I think also when you're doing the warm-up or after the game, take it as seriously as the game itself. Because I see a lot of kids, if they're doing a hamstring stretch, they'll barely hold their foot, or they'll barely do the stretches, which is you're doing the warm-up, but how much are you really doing it? So I think it's very important to just take it seriously. It's one thing to do the stretches, it's another thing to take them seriously. So I think that's very important.
I think also maybe the reason some kids don't take it so seriously is because maybe they don't understand why they're doing it. They're just told do this. But maybe if we explain, or parents, and we're able to, because maybe they can come and ask us, why do we need to do this? We can explain it. And once they're educated on it, maybe they'll be more focused and doing it because they'll understand the reasoning why. I think the reason why I maybe when I was younger didn't take so serious certain things is because I didn't understand. I was just told to do it and you just did it because that's what you were told. But if someone maybe explained the reasoning behind it, I think I would have been more apt to want to do it and put more effort into all that stuff.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, well, I didn't really do a proper warm-up. I didn't get hurt. So is it really that important? But yes, it is, because there's going to be that one time where you don't do a proper warm-up and then you end up getting hurt and you're like, oh, shoot, I should have taken it more seriously. So you want to prepare yourself so you're not in that situation.
Well, it only takes one time and you could be out 6 months, a year, who knows? And like, I would prefer to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes before and after practice to be able to save myself a year on the sidelines just watching everyone else get better while I'm just sitting there.
Yeah, but I think another topic another point that I want to kind of go back to is improvement, because I think it's hard for me, especially when I was younger. A lot of times it's hard to see if you're improving. Like, yeah, you play in games, you have one good game, you have one bad game, but I think it's hard to improve. But I think with these structured sessions that we're speaking about, it'll be easy to track your progress.
Yeah, well, I think the easiest way to track your progress, you got to think about it as like maybe a runner, right? Like a runner runs a certain amount of miles and it's timed and they got that time, and the next time they're going to try to maybe go a little farther and beat that time. And it's got to be the same thing here. I think the way you're going to notice your improvement when we talk about it is the little drills we do here, where we give you maybe 45 seconds and now it's competition drill, you got to get a certain amount. Well, now maybe you go home and practice that, and now I'm going to beat that amount and beat that amount again and beat that amount again, and now you can start to track your progress. And if you really want to get into it, maybe you start journaling it and keeping track of what you're doing, and now you can start to see if you want to do statistics and graphs of how much better you actually are getting. Because I didn't think of that stuff when I was younger, but now you have all these things, ChatGPT, all this stuff that you could input information into, and it can give you the statistical information that if you want to see how much better you actually are getting.
And I think it goes along with how our minds love like little rewards. So if you're, keeping a journal or you're keeping it on your phone in your notes, like, okay, on October 23rd, I did this in 45 seconds. And then a week later, you did it in 42 seconds. That's showing your mind like, oh, wow, I am improving and I am getting better. It reminds me of when I was training for college. One of our fitness tests was the 2 mile. And the first time I went out, I was pretty slow. And then like gradually, I wanted to go to the track because I never liked running. Yeah. It's not a fun part of the game, but as I was tracking it more, I actually wanted to go and beat my time. It became like a competitive game.
Yeah, it's like an addiction. Yeah. I also think that like also videotaping what you're doing is super important, because that shows you the physically what's different about you. You can start to see how much faster you're getting and the different body movements and how it's getting, like you're having a better understanding of how to move with the ball or take this touch. So I think it's important to also videotape what you're doing from time to time, because I'll get parents that come here, or we get parents that come here and they'll videotape their kid the first time, and then 2 months later they take the video again and we see the comparison, and it's like night and day difference, and that puts a smile on the kid's face because they're like, wow, I didn't notice it until just now. I haven't seen anything until I see the physical evidence of it.
Yeah, I think what's also important with that improvement is to keep going. Because I've seen a lot of kids, or even when I was growing up, people my age, they would see that improvement and then stop training. Yeah. But even at the professional level, I'm sure like you need to keep doing stuff on your own. Because when you're at practice, you're standing around a lot. You might not be working on what you exactly want to work on. So I think, it continues high school, college, professional level.
Well, I think, at least for me, I can speak from my experience, I just had a different mentality when I was playing, and I honestly think that's the reason why I was able to get to where I got to, even in the MLS, because I just wanted to improve so badly. Once I started to understand soccer and how training helped, it became obsessive to me, and I was addicted to training because I knew how much better it could help you get. So I played ASO soccer pretty much until I was in 8th grade, but then I was able to play in the MLS, and I was starting over kids that went to Stanford and Virginia and all these big schools. And the reason was because even when I was I went to D1 as well, but lower level D1s. But when I was there, I was always just training. Any moment I had to train or any moment I had to go play, I was doing it. So I think even when I was playing professionally in the MLS, there was a time I remember where I didn't get to start for a couple games, and I just felt all the time I needed to start. I wanted to start. So I had the strength and conditioning coach. I asked him if he could do some extra stuff with me. So we would show up an hour and a half before practice. He would put me through a speed and agility session because I wanted to be one of the faster center backs in the league. We would do that maybe for 45 minutes. I would do a little bit of strength work with him. I'd go back inside. I'd get ready for normal practice. I go back out to practice, train again with the entire team. I would do the warm-up, do the entire training. Then I would stay after with one of the assistant coaches and start working on my passing accuracy and my long balls and the heading and the 1v1 training. They would have academy kids come, and I would do one-on-one training with them. And it's just like the obsession to want to get better, but to also know what you need to get better at. Like, I knew I wanted to be a faster center back because I knew there wasn't that many guys that were that fast as center back, and that was going to be a difference between me and them. And I also knew I had a deficiency. I wasn't the best one-on-one defender, so I wanted to work on that. And I knew one of my strengths was my passing, and I wanted to keep getting that better and make that the difference between me and everyone else in my position so I go farther in the game. And that's why I kept working on that. So I think to understand what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you can work on is also super important to be able to make a plan for yourself to get better.
Yeah, I think the recognition is huge, what you were saying. You got to recognize what you're not good at. And a lot of times that can be hard because you want to believe that you're a good player, but there's always things that you can improve on. And I think that recognition of going to the field and, okay, I'm not that good on one-on-one defending, let me work on that, versus I'm really good at shooting, like let me keep working on that.
Well, I think it's also important that the parents let the kids figure it out too. So I think the parents give the kids too much, like, this is what you're good at, this is what you're not good at. Instead of being like, this was good, this was bad, how about you make them think? So like, yeah, I want to praise you for you did good. So maybe, Alex, you took a really good shot and you scored a really nice goal and you dribbled past a couple of kids. But then maybe I'd ask you a question during the game because I'm obviously your parent, I'm watching. Well, you lost that ball that one time. What do you think you could have done different? And now, instead of me just telling him, like, why'd you lose that ball? Now I'm making him think, being like, what could you have done different? What were some other options you could have done? Because guess what? He's not FIFA. I can't control him on the field. Like, he's got to think for himself. So I think it's super important to start making the kids think, and also to make them watch video. Everyone's got these traces now, and we were getting highlights. And yeah, you want to watch your good highlights, and it was the hardest thing for me to do, to watch my bad highlights, to watch my low lights. But those are the things that are going to help you the most, to be able to watch that and turn that into a strength. And I think the kids watching that and understanding, okay, maybe I could work on this, maybe work on that, that's going to help them get farther as well, because now they're strengthening their overall game.
Yeah, I think it's important too to have the right mentality when you're watching your bad highlights. It's not you're watching it to, get upset. It's more you're watching it, okay, like, what can I do in my next session that will help me get better at checking my shoulder or get better at taking a good first touch. So I think, when you're watching your highlights, like, have it with a growth mindset. Like, how am I going to grow from this, rather than, I'm not good at that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's 100% correct.
Yeah, so just to wrap up on today, what we were talking about, I think it's important, after listening to this podcast, to kind of think about yourself and what, are your habits when you're training, what are you not doing so well, what are you doing well, and then, make the changes that we spoke about today, having a proper warm-up, taking the drills that you're doing in the session seriously, and then having a good cool down. So I think, that's what I would encourage.
Yeah, I think, like we've said, just having a purpose when you're training is so important. It's going to separate you from everybody else. And I think that's what people need to take away from today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the most important thing is having fun, right? You don't want to go to the field and you're like, this feels like a job. Like, I got to do these drills today. Like, let me get through these 45 minutes and then I can go back home. It should be, something fun. And like we said a little before, tracking your progress should make it fun. It should make it enjoyable, like a little competitiveness to it. So I think, that's important.
And if you can find someone to train with every once in a while too, that helps competitiveness too. And maybe you can play a couple little games to get better at certain skills. We post the drills for competitive games too. You guys can use those on your own with your friends. Please do. But yeah, I think that's kind of wraps up what we were talking about today.
Yeah, and I think next episode we have a little special guest coming. I don't know if you want to tease it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to start talk about maybe the recruiting process for college, and they're going to come and talk about what they do and everything about the college process and getting recruited.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just for college players. Everyone's going to eventually get to that point, so it'll be a good session for everyone.
Yeah, I think it'll be good for the parents and the kids to kind of understand what's going to take. And because I feel like when you get there, I remember I was super nervous about it. So I can imagine only these parents that don't understand it and kids that don't understand it are going to get a little bit more out of this.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome, guys. We appreciate it. See you guys next time.
See ya.